All of these watercolor palettes might be tiny, but they pack a big punch. Hey there, art nerds. So it seems like I have amassed quite a collection, not on purpose, but quite a collection of empty travel watercolor palettes. All of these have a few things in common, namely they are meant to be filled from tubes and that they come empty so you can fill them with your preferred watercolors. And I wanted to kind of show you guys some of the options that you can find online, usually from AliExpress, as well as some of the options that you can make on your own. So we're going to start with this little travel palette from Superior. I've had it for a little while. This is a great option. I goofed a little bit, so let's see if I can fix it, because it has a double latching lid. Or I shall just take it out and we'll ignore my mistake. Okay, so this is a great little travel palette if you have somewhere where you can set up. It has a collapsible water container that is relatively generous. It has a couple of ridges where you can rest brushes on top, as well as a brush rest here on the side where you can slot them in. You can hang it from a lanyard around your neck and carry it that way, or clip it onto a bag. And it also has this completely detachable, you may have seen this sold independently, little watercolor palette. It has a silicone liner, and I have filled it with tube paints. Now, this thing has sat unused for about 1.5 years, so the tube paints have dried out. That doesn't bother me. All the paints in this palette are very quick to reactivate. But if you are looking for a watercolor or a gouache travel palette that is very compact but offers you a lot of color, because there is 4 rows of 4, so there's 16 slots in here, and the slots are very generously sized. They are large and they are deep. You could really fill this thing up with paint if you wanted to commit to it. The only downside, in my opinion, to this and you can mix on the plastic lid here. The only downside I really see to this palette is that you can't rearrange your pans if you don't like the color arrangement. So I would recommend swatching and figuring out your placement first, because once they're in there, they're pretty in there. So this is one of my favorites. Oh, and it just friction fits in. It's been a while since I've used this palette, not because this is a bad palette, but just been busy. It friction fits in, and then you lock the second one down, and that holds everything very secure. And this is by Superior, but you can find it, I've seen it various places under various different brands. So next, we are going to take a look at another very compact little palette. I got this one off of AliExpress. It comes in different sizes. It is opened with a button, and look at all these little quarter pans. So we have 2 sets of 16, making this a 32 well palette. These are, I'll admit, I haven't figured out how to get these out. If they are friction fit in, they are friction fit in so tight that I can't really seem to get them out. Also haven't tried super hard to pry them out. You do have some mixing surfaces here. They're small but serviceable. This is travel here. And this could be a good palette for those of us who love a million convenience colors. We don't want to do a lot of color mixing. We want to just grab our color and go. And you can also shut the individual little containers. Use the other side as a mixing surface if you want to. This one has an indent here. Very, very compact. And it's available in different sizes with different pan configurations. So next is one that arrived very recently. It is a bit disassembled because I need to fill it. And this one, I'm not going to fully reassemble it. I'm just going to give you guys an idea of how it should look. Is a very mini little palette that magnets on to this very sturdy little clip. and then you would clip this into, actually you'd probably clip it the other way around, onto your watercolor sketchbook. So it's going to both hold your sketchbook open, and it is going to hold, and it's very, very sturdy. It's a very heavy little magnet. It's going to hold your mini palette in place. This one comes in a few different sizes as well. I chose the 10 weld palette. The interior is made of acrylic. The rest of it is made of metal. This little thing here is for clipping on your water container. And it is a very, very minute amount of water. It has a rubber gasket so it won't leak in your bag, but it's great for if you really genuinely don't have a lot of space. And there are a lot of travel palettes out there. I have reviewed a lot of travel palettes. I'm specifically overviewing just a few of the ones that are available empty. Superior also makes this really nifty watercolor watch looking thing. It's not really a watch. It goes on your wrist. That one comes pre-filled, so we're not going to include that today. We're not going to talk about the Winsor Newton offerings or the Paul Rubens offerings. Those are going to be another video. We're just talking about empty palettes today. So it also has a very tiny, I still have the protective coating on it, little like melamine or white plastic or maybe white enamel mixing surface up here, and it breaks down super easily and compactly. It also has a teeny tiny sponge so that you can kind of scrub off your brush. So this is tiny and probably best suited to very, very tiny little palettes. So on the scale of tiny, this is a mini watercolor palette I picked up at my local art supply store. It is a fairly standard Altoids mini tin style enclosure. What makes it special is the injection molded little pans, a little bit bigger than this one here. There are 12 pans in this. Some are a little smaller than others. You can also find these little inserts online, and you could put them in empty tins like this, but they're still pretty pricey. This will also work with a clip magnet, and honestly, any good strong fridge clip magnet should allow you to DIY something kind of similar to this. So I think that is just such a neat idea. It's super nifty, and it serves a dual purpose, so I'm a fan of that. The downside to this is we don't have a sealed mixing surface here. You could if you wanted to, but there isn't really a lot of mixing, but it is about as compact, maybe a little bitty bit bigger than this palette here. And it also does not come with a pot of water or a pot for water. But then again, most of these are not going to. So these beautiful little wooden cases, you can see them all over the internet. They are held shut with magnets. They hold together with magnets. You have 3 little plastic mixing surfaces here, and then you fill the wells with paint. And like a lot of the other palettes we've looked at, you better figure out what order you want your colors in first, because you're not moving them around. And this is another one I found on AliExpress. You see these a lot on Etsy. I'm not saying everyone who sells these on Etsy is basically buying them from AliExpress and reselling them. You may find someone who's making these, and that's really cool, and they may be able to customize one for you. But a lot of these on Etsy are from AliExpress. So then we have more magnet closure mini palettes. We have this here, also magnet held together. This one is meant to clip into your book like this. So not using a magnet, it's going to be friction held or pressure held into your sketchbook. It has 15 mini pans. Technically, you can remove these. They're in there really, really tight. And then this is supposed to be a mixing surface, but you see how it's been milled or machined. It has little bitty grooves. That's going to hold on to paint. If they'd really want it, and I mean, oh, sorry, y'all. Obviously, looking through it clear like this is much more aesthetic, but if they wanted to make it more usable, they could have included these white things right there. I may have dinged it a little bit dropping. Oh well, nothing I can't fix later. And these magnets are not the best. They're a little grindy. I may have dinged it up a little bit. So, oh, I don't love. Wait, did one of these? Oh, they all came out. Good thing they weren't filled. So that's how you get those out, I guess. If you want to, you just drop it one time real good on the table. They're not glued in. They're just friction fit. They are minuscule little bitty pans. And you could just ditch them and just fill the welds, because I promise you, for the most part, once you fill this thing, you're not moving those paint pans around. They're in there pretty good. I'm honestly a little surprised. Oh, I think they did do a little dot of glue. I wonder if when I shut this thing, if they'll always just kind of jangle. Yeah, they're always going to want to jangle around. You can fix that with a glue dot. That's a pretty simple fix. Or just get rid of them entirely and just go straight in. Kind of like this palette here. Now, this one came with a Semi Art palette, or Semi Art paints came with it. I pried those things out. I do not like those paints. You can buy these empty as well. So this is pretty simple. It is held with a screw, so you can remove this if you want and use this as a mixing surface. It is fairly chunky acrylic. Several of these are fairly chunky acrylic. And it has, let's see, 3 rows of 5, so 15 wells, and then room for a very, very small brush if you happen to have one that small. And it just holds shut with a little magnet. Very simple. And we have one of the more interesting ones, in my opinion, similar to this and similar to this. But what makes this neat, in my opinion, I might be a sucker for a good gimmick. So it magnets in the upward position as well. But you see how it has these little holes here? You could put this in a watercolor binder. And there is a vendor on AliExpress who makes watercolor binders that it's living in my cart. I haven't pulled the trigger because they are very expensive for AliExpress, but I'm sure thinking about it. But this is meant to just clip in there. And I think that is super cute and a very good idea. I have left I think this might be a top protective coating. It may also just be frosted acrylic, but very simple, but it doesn't need to be complicated to work well. And speaking of very, very, very simple, we have possibly the simplest of palettes, and you guys may have seen me do this a number of times. It's a DIY homemade Altoids Tin palette. I, at this point, buy these in bulk from Amazon because I sell art kits, and also because I like to have, when I'm testing watercolors, I like to keep them separate until I finish testing them. So for that, I have these little tins and I buy a lot of half pans, and that way I can keep them organized. What I would recommend you do is either glue a little magnet on the back or buy the magnet tape that's pre-cut. You can find that on Amazon. Apply it to the back. And then you can fill your little Altoids Tin-esque palette however you want, with whatever size pans you want, in whatever orientation you want. You can leave half of it open and put a pencil in there and a mini water brush. You can spray paint the lid white enamel and make that a mixing surface. This is super cheap. It's like the cost of a mince tin. You could buy a magnetic fridge clip, kind of like this one, and do the exact same thing with this that we've done with the other magnet. All of the metallic ones will work with a clip like this. So you don't have to, you can go to an office supply store and find one very similar to this. You don't have to get this clip. But those are some of my empty upon purchase, with one exception, but they do sell empties for this. You can buy it plain. Travel watercolor palettes. All but one of these are very small, maybe 1, 2, and very compact. This one though is great if you're like going camping and you have like a dedicated camp spot and you can actually like set out and paint. because it has a lot of possibilities without taking up too much space. But let's say you're in a waiting room waiting for somebody to come out of a doctor's visit. These itty bitty ones are much more discreet. They're going to take up a lot less space. You can basically just work on your lap. And they're hopefully not going to attract too much attention other than from fellow watercolor enthusiasts who are going to want to know where you got your mini palette from. If you wanted to sneak watercolor in class, you could even use this one or the Altoids Tin or this one with a little water brush and probably not attract too much attention. So which is your favorite mini watercolor palette? Which one would you be the most interested in trying? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you ever see something interesting, unusual, or noteworthy on AliExpress, Amazon, or anywhere you do your online shopping, and you'd like me to take a look at it, I hope you will join me in my art-centric Discord server, the Paint Box, and share a link over there so I can scope it out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found this helpful, useful, and informative, and I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon. Bye, guys!